So now we're going to be plotting our sine function, and some of the steps to do this are look and label your graph A, B, C, and D. That way we can get our new x and y coordinates and eventually plot it. And if you look to see just look at your graph and look at your function and look to see different things that are in it. For example, we have a negative, so that means that when we plot it, it's going to be reflected over the x-axis. And remember that you have a sine graph versus a cosine graph, and so the original x and y coordinates are going to be different. And also notice that it's already factored out for you, because if it wasn't, you'd have to do it yourself. And don't ever forget this last number at the end. So our next steps are labeling it A, B, C, and D. So here's A, here is B, here's C, and here's D. If you remember, we did this in the previous video as well. And this just makes it so much easier when you're trying to get your new x and y coordinates. One way that you can remember how to get your x and y coordinates is that x is so much harder to get than y, and that's what we'll do x first. The original x coordinates are 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And in order to find our new x coordinates, we have to divide by whatever b is. So in this case, b is 3, so divide by 3, and subtract or add the phase shift. And if you remember from the previous video, phase shift is whatever gets us c to be 0. So in this case, c is negative half over pi over 2. So we'd be taking a positive pi over 2. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to give you the answers, but just remember that in most cases you'd have to multiply by the reciprocal of 3, and then just try to get a common denominator to add pi over 2. So there's 6. And a lot of these are in reduced form, so if you get a different answer, just remember you have to reduce it, or these are in reduced. And then for y, original y coordinates are 0, 1, 0, negative 1, and 0. And so this is much easier, like I said before, to get than your x. And what you have to do is multiply by a, which is negative 2. So you multiply by negative 2 and add d. Add or subtract d. And our d is a negative 1. And so then you subtract 1. And so be careful with your signs. And so there are new x and y coordinates. A way to make it so much easier for yourself is to try to find a common denominator and work from there, but you want the least common denominator. And we have we have 2 6s, a 2, a 3, and just a pi, so your best bet would be going with a 6. So now our first point is 3 pi over 6, and 3 pi over 6 would be just going 1, 2, 3, there's 3 pi over 6, and then our y is negative 1, so we just go down here, it's right here. 4 pi over 6, negative 3 is our next point, and we go over here, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4 pi over 6 is here, negative 3 is all the way down here. Our next point is 5 pi over 6, negative 1, so we go over here, and here was 4 pi over 6, so here's 5 pi over 6, negative 1 is up here, right across from that other negative 1. Our next point is pi 1, and we have pi over here, and then our 1 up here, so we graph that one there. So you're starting to see the sign almost, the sine graph or function. Our next point is 7 pi over 6, negative 1. So we go over here, and that's pi, and pi is the same as 6 pi over 6. Like I said earlier, and so then 7 pi over 6 would be right here. And our negative 1 would be right there. And if you can almost picture it right here, there's your sine graph right there.